Hey, yeah, I know you felt that cold prickle crawling up your spine right now. That's not imagination, that's memory waking up. Because here's the part they never told you. You didn't escape the shadows alone. Someone reached in when you were already halfway gone. When the lights shut off, when the doors closed, when even hope stopped answering its phone. Someone intervened, quietly, surgically, no applause, no credit, just a hand on your back when the fall was supposed to be terminal. And that's why you're still breathing. But don't relax, they didn't disappear, they're still watching you. See, people think being saved looks like a rescue, sirens, arms, warm light. Nah, this wasn't that. This was darker, smarter, almost cruel. They didn't pull you out of the fire. They taught you how to stand in it without burning. You were meant to break. That was the plan. Pressure until collapse, silence until surrender, pain until obedience. And someone said, not yet. That's why you confuse people now, because you move like someone who's been dead before, but came back with instructions. You walk calm where others panic. You smile where fear should live. You hesitate exactly once, and then never again. That's not natural, that's learned. They shaped you in the dark, not like a saint, not like a hero, more like a weapon that understands mercy and chooses when to ignore it. You carry both sides now, don't you? The soft one that still feels too much, and the ruthless one that could end a room without raising its voice. Angel and demon sharing the same heartbeat. That's why people sense something off about you. They can't label it. They just know. Whatever saved you didn't save you to be harmless. Here's the part that messes them up the most. You don't even look angry. You look awake. You've suffered enough to recognize patterns. Betrayal taught you geometry. Loss taught you timing. Pain taught you restraint. That's evolution, not pretty, not moral, effective. And whoever watched you from the shadows, they didn't interfere again because they didn't need to. You learned. You learned when to speak, when to disappear, when to let people underestimate you long enough to hang themselves with their own confidence. You learned how to survive without becoming obvious, how to win without announcing it, how to be dangerous without looking violent. That's why the world feels different now. Quieter, slower, like it's buffering while you already know the outcome. You think that's coincidence? No, that's surveillance from the other side. They're not protecting you anymore. They're observing the result, seeing what happens when someone survives hell and refuses to become small. And here's the sick little twist. You don't need them anymore. That's the paradox. The thing that saved you created something it no longer controls. You became self-sustaining. That's why you feel that pressure lately. Eyes on you, doors opening too easily, threats dissolving before they reach you. You're not being hunted, you're being studied. Because people don't know if you're a warning or a prototype. You don't react like victims. You don't dominate like tyrants. You just exist with this unsettling calm, like you already survived the worst possible ending and everything else is extra time. And deep down, you know it. You know why chaos doesn't scare you, why silence feels familiar, why darkness feels trained. Someone saved you from the shadows once. Now you own them. And whoever's still watching, they're not there to stop you. They're there to see how far something like you can go before the world has to change its rules. You feel it now, don't you? That subtle shift, like the air itself leaned in closer. That's because once you realize someone was watching, you can't unrealize it. Awareness changes posture, breathing, intent. And here's the truth nobody warns you about. Being saved like that rewires you, not gently. It leaves fingerprints on your instincts. You don't panic the same way anymore. You don't hope the same way either. Hope feels inefficient now. Instead, you trust patterns, signals, silence. You read rooms before words show up. You hear danger before it speaks. That's not paranoia, that's conditioning. You were trained by absence, by near-death moments that didn't finish the job, by nights where something should have happened, but didn't. And every time the blade paused mid-air, every time the collapse stopped 1 inch from final, something in you learned timing. You learned that survival isn't loud. It's precise. That's why your calm scares people. Because calm like yours doesn't come from comfort. It comes from acceptance of worst-case scenarios and preparation for all of them. You've already pictured your own end, sat with it, made peace with it. So what leverage do they have left? None. And that's where the watchers become nervous. Because the thing about being saved by shadows is this: you don't owe the light loyalty anymore. You don't chase validation. You don't beg to be understood. You don't explain yourself to people who haven't bled quietly. You let them misread you. That's strategy. They call you cold, detached, unemotional. They don't realize emotion didn't disappear. It matured into control. You still feel everything, you just don't leak it. That's why your presence hits before your words do. Why rooms adjust. Why conversations shift tone when you enter. Because people can sense when someone has crossed a threshold they can't even see. You crossed it in the dark. That savior? They didn't whisper encouragement. They didn't offer comfort. They watched. They waited. They let you struggle just enough to harden, not enough to shatter. That's the cruel mercy of real protection. And now you're walking proof that pain can sharpen instead of destroy. You don't seek revenge. You seek position. You don't rage. You calculate. You don't explode. You outlast. That's why chaos bends around you instead of through you. And let's be honest, there's a part of you that misses the shadows, because that's where you became dangerous. Not reckless, not cruel. Dangerous in the way that makes systems malfunction. Dangerous in the way that forces liars to tell on themselves. Dangerous in the way that silence becomes louder than threats. You don't need to announce power when you are it. That's the evolution they didn't plan for. You were supposed to be saved and stay grateful. Stay small, stay obedient to the narrative. But something went wrong. You kept the darkness and integrated it. Angel instincts with demon awareness. Compassion backed by boundaries that don't negotiate. Mercy with teeth. That combination? Rare, uncomfortable, unclassifiable. That's why the watchers haven't stepped in again. They don't know whether to intervene or document. Because whatever you are now, you're not a victim story anymore. You're a variable, and variables scare systems that rely on predictability. You don't need to rush. You don't need to prove anything. You don't need permission. Just keep moving the way you do. Quietly, deliberately, with that unsettling certainty that comes from surviving what should have erased you. Because somewhere in places you'll never see, someone is still watching, not to save you, but to understand what happens when the shadow saved learns how to choose the dark instead of fearing it. And here's the part nobody tells you because it's too unsettling to admit out loud. Being watched doesn't end when the danger passes. It ends when you become the danger. That's why the eyes never left. Because once you survive something that was meant to erase you, the universe doesn't stop and clap. It leans forward. It observes. It recalibrates. It asks a quiet, uncomfortable question. What did that create? You weren't preserved to return to normal life. Normal was never the destination. You were preserved to see what happens when someone absorbs the lesson instead of the trauma. That's why your intuition feels surgical now, why you can sense shifts before they happen, why you don't need evidence. You recognize trajectories. You see how things end long before they start. People mistake that for arrogance. They don't realize it's memory. You remember what it feels like when the floor disappears. So you don't stand where collapses happen anymore. You choose positions with exits. You choose silence over exposure. You choose patience over impulse. That's not fear. That's mastery, learned the hard way. And yes, there are moments when you wonder if you imagined it, if maybe no one saved you, if maybe you just got lucky. But luck doesn't teach this kind of discipline. Luck doesn't leave you with the ability to sit inside uncertainty without flinching. Luck doesn't turn pain into pattern recognition. Luck doesn't create this calm gravity around you that makes others orbit without knowing why. Someone intervened, not to comfort you, to preserve potential. Because potential like yours is volatile. Untempered, it self-destructs. Untested, it never activates. So they let life pressure test you. They let betrayal strip illusions. They let isolation burn dependency away. They let failure carve humility into your bones. And every time you stood back up, quieter but sharper, the observation continued. You weren't being abandoned. You were being evaluated. That's why things feel different now. Why consequences don't hit you the way they hit others. Why doors open with minimal effort or slam shut early, saving you time. You're no longer in the chaos phase. You're in the aftermath phase, where cause and effect start favoring you. Because you don't move emotionally anymore. You move intentionally. You don't announce growth. You demonstrate inevitability. And here's the paradox that really messes with people. You're not trying to dominate anyone. You just refuse to be controlled. That refusal alone destabilizes environments built on leverage, guilt, fear, and dependency. You don't need to threaten. Your detachment already does the work. People feel it when they can't pull your strings, when you don't chase approval, when your silence doesn't beg to be filled. That's when they start projecting, calling you cold, calling you distant, calling you changed. They're right. You changed in the shadows where personalities die and identities are rebuilt. You learned the difference between attention and power, between noise and influence, between survival and dominance. And somewhere along the way, you stopped asking, why me? You started asking, what now? That's when the watching intensified, because that's the moment survivors split into two paths. Those who relive the pain forever, and those who extract leverage from it. You chose the second path, which means whatever saved you originally, it doesn't see you as fragile anymore. It sees you as activated. You're not being protected now. You're being left alone on purpose, to see what you'll build, to see what you'll dismantle, to see whether you become a quiet correction or a visible disruption. And the scariest part, you don't even feel rushed. You're comfortable letting things unfold, comfortable letting people underestimate you, comfortable letting time do the heavy lifting. Because you know something they don't. You already survived the worst chapter. Everything after that is leverage. So if you ever feel that sensation again, that subtle awareness, that sense of eyes just beyond perception, don't panic. That's not fear, that's confirmation. You weren't saved to be watched forever. You were saved so that when you finally move, whatever's watching will realize it didn't save a victim. It preserved a force that learned how to operate without permission. And once you accept that, really accept it, something settles inside you. Not peace, something colder, clearer, more dangerous. Because you stop wondering who saved you, and you start understanding why. You weren't pulled back from the edge to live quietly. You weren't spared to blend in. You were spared because the moment you broke would have been a waste. You were carrying something unfinished. That's why the shadows didn't consume you. They recognized you. Most people crumble when they're stripped of safety, identity, and certainty. You didn't. You adapted. You learned how to exist without guarantees, how to function without applause, how to move forward even when the future went completely silent. That's not resilience. That's a recalibration of reality. And now you notice it. How situations bend when you stop forcing them. How enemies reveal themselves when you stay calm. How pressure breaks others while it sharpens you. You don't resist chaos anymore. You let it show you who's real. That's why you don't cling to people. Why you don't panic when things fall apart. Why loss doesn't terrify you the way it used to. You already lost everything once and survived. That makes you immune to threats built on fear, which is exactly when the watching shifts from curiosity to concern. Because systems are built on predictable reactions: fear, desire, validation, shame. You operate outside that loop. You don't respond on cue. You don't escalate when provoked. You don't beg when ignored. You just wait. And waiting terrifies people who rely on momentum to stay in control. You let others exhaust themselves. You let narratives collapse under their own weight. You let time expose lies without lifting a finger. That restraint, that's what the shadows taught you. They taught you that power doesn't rush. It positions. They taught you that the loudest person in the room is usually the weakest. That desperation leaks information. That silence makes people confess without realizing it. You didn't become heartless. You became selective. You still care, deeply, just not blindly. That's the duality they can't reconcile. How someone can be kind and terrifying, patient and unstoppable, empathetic and impossible to manipulate. Angel enough to understand pain, demon enough to never be controlled by it again. And that balance, that's rare. That's why you feel slightly out of sync with the world now, like conversations lag behind you, like motivations feel transparent, like drama feels childish. You've seen what real darkness looks like. Everything else feels like theater. So when people test you, you don't react. You observe. When they doubt you, you don't explain. You adjust trajectory. When they try to provoke emotion, you give them nothing. And that emptiness unsettles them more than anger ever could. Because anger is familiar. Silence with intent is not. You don't need to dominate the room. Your presence already alters it. And somewhere, not in a place you can point to, not in a form you could confront, the watcher sees it, sees that you no longer need saving, that you no longer seek approval, that you no longer fear isolation. Isolation was your training ground. You learned how to sit with yourself, how to dismantle illusions, how to rebuild identity without witnesses. That kind of self-authorship makes you ungovernable. So if you ever feel that quiet pressure again, that sense that something is paying attention, don't look over your shoulder. That's not a predator behind you. That's the echo of the moment you were supposed to disappear and didn't. The shadows didn't lose you. They forged you. And now the world is slowly catching up to the version of you that was born there. The one who doesn't need to be seen, doesn't need to be praised, doesn't need to be saved ever again. Just let them keep watching. Because every step you take now rewrites the reason you were spared in the first place. And the more you walk forward like this, the more obvious it becomes. You were never meant to return from the shadows the same. People think survival means getting back what you lost, your innocence, your softness, your old version. That's a lie they tell themselves to feel safe. You didn't come back to reclaim anything. You came back upgraded. You don't crave peace the way you used to. You crave clarity. You don't want comfort. You want control over your inner world. You don't want to be loved by everyone. You want to be untouchable by manipulation. And that's the difference between someone who healed and someone who evolved. You stopped asking life to be fair. You started asking it to be honest. That's when the fog lifted. You see intentions now before words form. You feel betrayal before it moves. You sense alignment before opportunity even knocks. That's not mysticism. That's pattern recognition earned through pain. And here's the thing that shakes people the most. You don't resent what happened to you. You understand it. You understand that pressure reveals architecture, that suffering exposes weak foundations, that only things meant to last survive refinement by fire. So when someone tries to shame you for changing, you don't flinch. You know what staying the same would have cost you. Your life, your sanity, your future. You didn't become darker because you wanted to. You became darker because the world tried to swallow you whole, and you refused to dissolve. So you condensed, you focused, you sharpened. That's alchemy, not corruption. And that's why the Watcher never intervenes now, because interference would be disrespectful. You earned this version of yourself. Every boundary, every silence, every moment of restraint. You earned the right to move slowly while others scramble. You earned the right to trust yourself more than opinions. You earned the right to walk away without explanation. You don't owe anyone the story of how you survived. You're not here to perform your scars. Your existence alone is the proof. And deep down, you know something else now. If no one had saved you back then, you would have found a way anyway. That realization is the final severance. You stop seeing yourself as spared. You start seeing yourself as inevitable, which means whatever was watching from the shadows, it wasn't choosing you. It was witnessing the moment you chose yourself. And once that happens, there's no going back. You don't spiral anymore. You don't beg. You don't collapse inward. You adapt. You recalibrate. You move. And that movement carries weight. So if the nights feel quieter now, if the chaos doesn't grab you the way it used to, if people seem unsettled by your calm, that's not emptiness. That's integration. You didn't escape the shadows. You absorbed them. And now, whether anyone understands it or not, whether they're still watching or finally looking away, you walk forward as someone who knows this one irreversible truth. Nothing that survived what you survived can ever be powerless again. Easy now. Don't move. Feel that pressure in the air? That's not paranoia. That's attention. That's the sound of rooms going silent because your name just crossed a table you were never meant to see. They're quiet now, not because they stopped caring, because they started studying. You don't get studied when you're ordinary. You don't get studied when you're loud, sloppy, predictable. You get studied when you do things that don't fit any existing file, when every model breaks the moment it tries to explain you. And here's the part they'll never admit out loud. They're not studying what you do. They're studying why only you can do it. Because there are three things you do that don't belong to either side of the moral fence. They're not clean, they're not evil. They exist in that dangerous middle space where angels and monsters shake hands. First, you stay calm, where fear is supposed to bloom, not fake calm, not the stiff, rehearsed confidence of someone pretending. I'm talking about that unsettling stillness that shows up after you've already died inside once. They've watched people crumble under pressure their entire lives. They've charted heart rates, cortisol spikes, behavioral leaks. They know exactly when a human is supposed to crack. And then there's you. When things go sideways, when consequences line up like firing squads, when everyone else starts explaining themselves or panicking or reaching for allies, you slow down, not because you don't care, because you see more. Your calm isn't peace, it's predatory awareness. It's the calm of someone who's already mapped every exit, every variable, every possible outcome, before the room even realizes there's a problem. That terrifies them. Because calm like that doesn't come from safety. It comes from surviving chaos so intense it burned the flinch reflex out of your nervous system. You learned something most people never do. Fear is loud. Power is quiet. Second, you adapt faster than guilt can catch you. Watch closely. This is the one they really don't understand. Most people freeze when their identity is threatened. You don't. When a role stops working, you shed it without ceremony. When a version of you becomes a liability, you let it die. No funeral, no apology, no backward glance. They see it as cold. They label it ruthless. They whisper words like detached and dangerous. And how does he do that? But what they're really watching is evolution in real time. You don't cling to who you were to protect your ego. You don't romanticize pain. You don't need to be seen as good to keep moving forward. You understand something brutal and sacred at the same time. Identity is a tool, not a shrine. That's where the paradox hits them, because saints cling to righteousness. Psychopaths cling to impulse. You cling to outcomes. You'll wear the halo if it opens doors. You'll wear the horns if it keeps you alive. And when neither serves you, you wear nothing at all. That flexibility breaks their moral frameworks. They need heroes or villains. You operate like a force of nature. Third, and this is the one that keeps them awake, you move without announcing intent. Most people leak desire. They posture. They hint, they over-explain, they want credit before results. You don't. You let people underestimate you long enough to build entire false narratives about who you are and what you're capable of. You let them relax, you let them talk. And while they're busy categorizing you into something safe, you're already 3 steps past the point where their reactions matter. Your silence isn't emptiness. It's compression, pressure without release, thought without display, action without warning. That's why they can't predict you. Prediction requires patterns, and you don't repeat yourself emotionally, only strategically. You evolve through pain instead of being defined by it. Every betrayal sharpened you. Every loss stripped excess weight. Every humiliation burned another illusion out of your system. You didn't come out kinder. You came out clearer. That's the part they don't want to say. You're not dangerous because you're angry. You're dangerous because you're resolved. Because you've already made peace with the idea that being misunderstood is cheaper than being exposed. That solitude is a small price to pay for sovereignty. That control beats applause every time. So they study you in silence. They cross-reference moments. They replay interactions frame by frame, searching for the exact instant you slipped past their expectations. And every time, the answer is the same. You didn't slip. You walked straight through. You live in the space where light and dark stop fighting and start cooperating. Where mercy and menace share the same spine. Where survival looks holy from one angle and monstrous from another. That's why angels wouldn't fully trust you, and demons wouldn't dare underestimate you. You're not here to be understood. You're here to be effective, and the quieter they get, the more you should smile. Because silence isn't disinterest. Silence is when they stop laughing, stop talking, stop assuming. Silence is when the studying begins. And you already know the outcome. They can watch you forever. They'll never replicate you. Because what you do isn't learned. It's earned through pressure, through loss, through becoming something that no longer needs permission to exist. Let them study. You've already moved on. They keep telling themselves it's just curiosity, that they're gathering data, that it's academic. But you and I both know that's a lie. Curiosity doesn't sit this still. Curiosity doesn't shut doors and lower voices. Curiosity doesn't rewatch the same moments at 3 a.m. with the sound off, hunting for the exact second control changed hands. What they're feeling is recognition, because deep down, something in them knows this isn't about talent. It's not about skill. It's not even about intelligence. It's about orientation. You're pointed at reality differently. Where most people face comfort, you face truth. Where most people protect their self-image, you protect your position. Where most people react, you calculate. And that difference, that's not cosmetic, that's structural. They don't know how to say this without sounding insane, so they don't say it at all. But they've noticed something chilling. When chaos enters the room, it seems to organize itself around you. Not because you control it, because you understand it. You don't fight uncertainty. You don't beg for clarity. You don't need guarantees. You've lived long enough in the fog to see shapes before they harden. That's why you don't rush decisions. That's why you don't flinch at ambiguity. That's why your pauses feel heavier than other people's actions. They think you're waiting. You're not. You're letting the truth finish revealing itself. And here's the part that makes them deeply uncomfortable. You don't seem motivated by the things that motivate everyone else. Praise doesn't steer you. Fear doesn't leash you. Approval doesn't soften you. You'll accept those things if they show up. But you don't chase them. You chase alignment. When something feels off, you disengage without drama. When something clicks, you move with surgical precision. No emotional speeches. No public declarations. No need to be seen trying. That's not arrogance, that's internal authority. And internal authority is untraceable. They can pressure a crowd. They can manipulate a mob. They can intimidate a hierarchy. But someone who answers only to their own internal compass, that's a nightmare. Because leverage only works when someone needs something from you. And you learned, painfully, early, how to survive without needing what most people need. You learned how to be alone without collapsing, how to lose without becoming bitter, how to win without becoming loud. That combination rewires a person. It strips you down to essentials. That's why your presence feels heavier than your words. Why people sense consequence around you before you ever speak. Why silence bends in your direction. You don't posture dominance. You radiate inevitability. They study how you respond to betrayal, because this is where most people reveal their limits. Some become vengeful, some become submissive, some fracture into self-doubt and start begging reality to forgive them. You don't do any of that. You observe, you mark patterns, you adjust access, You recalibrate your internal map of who can be trusted with proximity and who can't. No tantrums, no moral speeches, no emotional leakage, just quiet subtraction. That scares them more than retaliation ever could, because retaliation is predictable. Withdrawal is not. Withdrawal means you've already processed the loss and extracted the lesson. It means the emotional transaction is closed. It means they no longer exist where it counts. And when someone realizes they've been removed from relevance without a word, that does something ugly to the human psyche. That's why they study your restraint, because restraint isn't weakness. It's choice. You could escalate, you could dominate, you could expose. You simply don't, unless it serves something larger. That tells them something dangerous. You're not governed by impulse. You're governed by timing. And timing is the difference between noise and power. They notice how you don't rush to correct misunderstandings, how you let false narratives breathe, how you don't chase perception. You understand something most people never grasp. Perception is a weather system. Truth is a gravity well. Weather changes. Gravity wins. So you let people believe what they need to believe until belief collides with reality. And when that collision happens, you're already positioned on the other side of it. That's the third layer beneath the three things they think they're studying. They think they're watching behavior. They think they're decoding skill. They think they're analyzing psychology. What they're actually watching is integration. Your light and your dark don't compete anymore. You stopped trying to be pure when purity became a liability. You stopped trying to be feared when fear became noisy. You chose something far more dangerous. You chose to be whole. Wholeness means you don't suppress your aggression. You aim it. You don't deny your compassion. You ration it. You don't reject your shadows. You assign them purpose. That's why you don't need to perform goodness. And you don't need to perform menace. You can switch tones without losing yourself. That fluidity is what they can't replicate. Because it wasn't taught, it was forged. Forged in moments where you realized no one was coming. Forged in silence where excuses evaporated. Forged in choices where you either evolved or disappeared. Most people outsource their spine to rules, roles, or approval. You built yours from consequences, and now they sit there quietly, pretending not to stare, pretending not to adjust their behavior around you, pretending they don't feel it. But they do. They feel that you're not here to play the same game, that you don't need the same outcomes, that your definition of winning doesn't look like theirs. And that makes you impossible to corner. Because how do you threaten someone who already survived the worst-case scenario? How do you manipulate someone who already paid the price of self-honesty? How do you control someone who doesn't need to be liked, validated, or understood? You can't. So they study, they whisper, they watch. And the longer they do, the more they realize the truth they've been avoiding. You're not dangerous because you're unpredictable. You're dangerous because you're finished becoming. You already crossed the threshold where fear teaches its last lesson. Everything after that is application. Let them stay quiet. Quiet is respect disguised as denial. And denial is always the final stage before reality hits. You don't need to announce anything. Your existence already did. And here's where it gets even darker. Because the more they study you, the more something unsettling dawns on them. You're not reacting to the world anymore. You're operating ahead of it. Most people live inside feedback loops. They wait for signals. They wait for permission. They wait for proof before they move. You don't. You move on anticipation. You don't need certainty because you learned the hard way that certainty is usually a trap dressed up as safety. So you learn to read tension instead. Micro shifts, energy changes, the silence between words. That's why you're always early to the truth and late to the noise. They see it when you exit situations right before they collapse, when you stop investing right before the cost spikes, when you detach emotionally right before betrayal surfaces. To them, it looks supernatural. To you, it's survival refined into instinct. And that's another thing they don't want to say out loud. Your instincts aren't emotional. They're educated. You paid for them with years of misreads, with trusting the wrong people, with believing stories that felt good but weren't true. You learned what patterns smell like before they become visible. That's why you don't explain yourself anymore. Explanation is for people who doubt their own decisions. You don't. You've seen enough outcomes to trust your internal signal, even when it contradicts consensus. That alone makes you dangerous, because consensus is how systems stay stable, and instability is how systems reveal weakness. You don't disrupt by force. You disrupt by not fitting. You don't fight the structure. You move in ways the structure wasn't built to handle. You don't oppose power. You sidestep it, and suddenly it's swinging at air. That's when they start whispering questions that scare even them. How does he stay composed when leverage is applied? Why doesn't pressure distort his behavior? Why does he seem prepared for outcomes that haven't happened yet? And the scariest one of all, what if he already accounted for us? Because here's the truth they're circling but refusing to land on. You don't assume goodwill, but you don't assume hostility either. You assume self-interest. That makes your expectations clean. You don't take things personally. You take them seriously. You don't collapse when intentions reveal themselves. You adjust your position. Emotionally immature people call that cold. Strategic minds call it clarity. You learned early that being emotionally reactive makes you legible, and being legible makes you controllable. So you became something else. You became opaque, not closed, not numb, selective. Your emotions didn't disappear. They went underground. They informed decisions instead of hijacking them. That's why when you do speak, people feel it more than they hear it. Because your words aren't trying to convince. They're reporting conclusions already reached. That's another reason they're studying you. Most people negotiate with reality. You don't. You accept what is immediately. Then you work from there. No denial phase. No bargaining, no fantasy detours. That puts you several steps ahead in any unfolding situation. While others are still emotionally processing, you're already reallocating resources. They notice how you don't cling to fairness. This one really messes with them. You don't expect the world to be just. You expect it to be consistent. You don't waste energy being outraged by imbalance. You study how imbalance operates, and then you position yourself accordingly. That doesn't make you immoral, it makes you adaptive. You understand that morality without awareness is just vulnerability wearing a halo. So you built a code instead, not borrowed, not inherited, forged. A code that allows you to be gentle without being naive, dangerous without being reckless, detached without being empty. That balance is rare, and rarity triggers attention. They notice how you don't chase closure. This one confuses them deeply. Most people need resolution to move forward. They need apologies, explanations, narratives that make the pain make sense. You don't. You move forward with unanswered questions intact. You don't need to understand why someone did what they did. You just need to know what it means for access. That ability to continue without emotional bookkeeping frees enormous cognitive space. That space is where you plan, where you see angles others miss, where you hold long-term vision without panic. They see that you don't burn bridges dramatically, you let them decay quietly. That's more final. Fire draws attention. Decay erases relevance. And relevance is what actually gives people power over you. That's why you don't seek revenge. You seek irreversibility. You don't want someone to feel pain. You want them to lose influence. That's colder and far more effective. The longer they watch, the clearer it becomes. You're not optimized for social harmony. You're optimized for continuity, for surviving long arcs, for outlasting cycles, for remaining functional while environments change. That's why you don't peak loudly. You endure quietly. And endurance is what scares institutions, because systems are built to manage spikes, not sustained anomalies. You don't need chaos to win. You don't need collapse. You thrive in transitions, when rules blur, when hierarchies wobble, when certainty evaporates. That's when you're most alive, because uncertainty is your native terrain. You were shaped in it, hardened by it, educated by it. That's why the studying never stops, because every time they think they've isolated the variable, you've already changed, not erratically, intentionally. You don't reinvent yourself for attention. You refine yourself for advantage. And here's the final truth they'll never put in writing. You're not a threat because you break rules. You're a threat because you understand why the rules exist. And once you understand that, you don't need to rebel. You simply step where the rule no longer applies. Let them stay quiet. Let them keep watching. Let them keep pretending this is neutral curiosity. Every minute they spend studying you is another minute they're acknowledging what they can't control. And you don't need to speed up. You don't need to announce. You don't need to prove anything. You've already become the kind of presence that forces silence. And silence is where real power always reveals itself. And here's how it ends. Not with noise, not with confrontation, not with some dramatic reveal. It ends with acceptance, not yours, theirs. Because at some point, quietly, without ceremony, they stop trying to decode you and start adjusting around you. They lower expectations, they soften assumptions, they change behavior without ever admitting why. That's the tell. That's when study turns into caution. They realize you're not something to be rushed, pressured, or cornered. You're something to be accounted for. You don't need to dominate the room. The room already recalibrates when you enter. You don't need to announce intent. Your restraint communicates enough. You don't need to explain your depth. Depth explains itself. When people drown trying to reach it, you exist in that uncomfortable truth where light isn't innocent and darkness isn't reckless, where power is simply clarity without apology. So let them stay quiet. Let them keep watching. Let them keep pretending this is curiosity and not instinctive self-preservation. Because the moment they stopped underestimating you, the moment they stopped testing you, the moment they started studying you in silence, that's when you already won. Not loudly, not visibly, irreversibly.